Welcome back to the Wealth and Purpose Podcast, where we help families thrive by connecting wealth and purpose. I'm your host, Brady Fineske, president of TFO Wealth Partners, and we're thrilled to have you here with us today. What if the secret to a happy, resilient family isn't about avoiding conflict or clinging to tradition, but about designing your family life in a lot of the same ways with purpose, intention, and creativity that we bring to our business or our professional lives? Well, today I'm joined by best-selling author Bruce Feiler to discuss his book, The Secrets of Happy Families. Together, we're going to uncover storytelling, small changes, intentional planning ideas, all things that can help families thrive, both emotionally and financially, but across generations. Bruce is one of America's most thoughtful voices on life transitions, family dynamics, and navigating change. He's the best-selling author of numerous books, 7 and counting, including Secrets of the Happy Families, Life is in the Transitions, and The Council of Dads. His work has been featured in New York Times, where he's a longtime contributor and has helped millions rethink how they approach life's biggest challenges. Bruce, it's an honor to have you in studio. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Thrilled to have you here right off the plane into studio. And so one of my favorite quotes in the book is that great families aren't born, they're built. What took you down the road to help families and think about helping to build great families?
The question, how do you build great families, is really the short answer. As my wife reminded me before I came to have this conversation with you, be sure you tell them that you wrote about happy families, not because you had one, but because you wanted one, right? So I'm the parent of identical twin daughters. And my wife runs an organization that supports entrepreneurs in 50 countries around the world. Like, I travel for a living. So we had a kind of particular set of challenges that are a very contemporary set of challenges, right? 77% of women now work outside the home. So we had that dynamic. And I looked around, and people of my generation, what do people do when they're frustrated about how to have a happy family? Like, they call their parents,
right? But
their experience is so outdated to be completely irrelevant, right? They go on, they Facebook or, Instagram, whatever it is now, their friends, and they're just as clueless. We're 100 years after Freud, right? The therapists have had their opportunity. And what is it that we can do? And I think you mentioned this in the introduction, which is that there is a lot of wisdom out there about how to make groups successful, whether it's sports teams or organizations, right? How to manage money with people who do what you do, right? How to do storytelling from Hollywood, and how in Silicon Valley to manage change. And so the idea of that, which has sort of become a life's work now of mine going on 15 years, was to go out, find the best ideas out there that are relevant to families, but not in the traditional way that people talk about how to raise families, and bring them into the family space.
Yeah, I think I heard you say at one point, modern families need modern solutions.
Exactly. And I think that is a massive pain point, which is that we're kind of stuck. I mean, in fact, the incident that really began this, I come from a 5-generation family and 3-generation family business in Savannah, Georgia, and we gather every year on Tybee Island off the coast of Savannah for a sort of what I call Grandparent Olympics. And so we were there, and my sister was there first, and she had older children, so she's dealing with technology, right? And drinking and homework and college and all of that. We had very young children at the time. My brother is the last to arrive. He's older, manages the family business, doesn't have children. He's focused on, should we put dad in a wheelchair full time? Should we take the car keys from them? These kinds of questions. And so we're gathered around this table, and I see my teenage nephew texting under the table, and I know I'm not supposed to say anything, but like, I'm the sayer of things. So I've asked him to put his phone away, and boom, and like the whole thing sort of exploded. My sister snaps at me, not to parent her children. Like, my father, points out that my children are the ones that are balancing the spoons on their noses. My brother says, why can't we have an adult conversation like we used to before the kids were around? Right? And at one point, my wife gets up like to go get ice cream for the kids, by the way, which is exactly what her mother would have done in that situation to avoid the conflict. And by the end, it's just sort of everybody went their separate ways. And my father called me to his bedside and he said, our family's falling apart. And I was like, no, we're not.
Right.
We're stronger than ever,
This
Dad.
is normal.
Yeah, exactly.
Healthy fighting.
And then the next morning, because I'm the stayer, upper nighter, or thinker type, I turn to my wife and it's like, who do we turn to to make sure our children are happy? And that's what set me on this journey.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, there's 200 different ideas, solutions that families can do, some simple, some informal, some formal. But of all those solutions in the book, what are some of your favorites that can help families kind of just take a first step towards trying to improve things, right? I know that with our children, it seems like the 10 minutes we get together, we're solving problems. We're not talking about what's going well.
Right.
It's like, who's getting this person there and how are we getting them? What do we pick up your thing? Do this. And so it's like we're always on defense. And yet there's some simple solutions during that time we get that we can do certain things. What are some of those things you've seen that help?
Yeah, well, let me first of all just address give you some sort of big think, which is the other thing that my wife tells me I shouldn't do. But basically, humans have something that no other species have, right? Which is every other species of animal on the planet, when the kids are weaned, they can have children themselves. Humans don't have that, right? So when our children are weaned, they still have 10, 12, 15 years before they can have children. That is a feature, not a bug. And the reason for that is it is in that period of time. I call it from, first step to first kiss, right? From potty training to the prom. Like there's a window in there where what do we do in that time that no other species is doing? We learn to communicate. We learn to be a group. We learn how to stick together, solve problems together.
Yep.
That is when the family is generated. And so when I went into this, you said 200, that's a sort of joke of mine to make a point, because I don't know about you. You've got 5 kids and at one point had 6 kids, if I'm not mistaken. But I hate those. These are the 5 or 7 or 10 things that you must do to have a happy family, right? I don't like those because I forget number 5. I disagree with number 7. I'm like, my kids will never get into college, and it's all going to go downhill. But one of the things that happened was I realized in talking to families, and I've done it now for 15 years, is guess what, hotshot? There are certain things. So I sort of have this non-list list of things that high-functioning families do, and they come down to 3 things, inside of which are the 200. So number 1 is they adapt all the time. Mm-hmm. So the idea that I had, which, I'm a comer-upper of philosophy, so we're going to come up with a certain set of philosophies and we're going to follow them, doesn't work that way, hotshot. In fact, things are changing all the time. Okay, literally as I speak to you, my children are in one place, my wife is in Europe. Okay, I'm here with you in Ohio, and next week it's going to be entirely different, right?
Constant change.
There's a, and you need a way to manage that change, right? So we can talk about that. That's a family meeting, right? That's how you deal with dinner when people aren't always at dinner in the cult of family dinner. But you need to adapt all the time. But if you adapt all the time, you are non-functioning, and that you need some way to have core values, something that doesn't change, right? So the second thing that high-functioning families do is they talk a lot, and not just about problems and conflict, as important as that is, but what does it mean to be a family? What is important to our family? So you both need adaptation and you need structure, right? So adapt all the time, talk a lot. And then the third thing that they do is that they go out and play, and that they make time to make positive memories. So whether it's, is it game night? Is it movie night? Is it fishing? Is it hiking? Is it going to the theater? Is it going to museums? Whatever it is, you need a way to make positive memories so that when the conflict does come, so when the change does happen, when the unhappy periods of unhappiness do show up, you have the strength from, that you can build on to manage all of the challenges.
Well, it makes perfect sense. I mean, change is inevitable, right? But to have a plan, no different than when we run our businesses or in our professional lives, we meet a lot, we communicate a lot, we do all the things that, we start a new workout plan, you have a plan, you have a goal, you have an order you're going to go in. But in our families, we just tend to think it's just going to happen.
Well, I think that's a great point because in social science, if we want to geek out on the science for a second, there's this idea of your best possible self, right? You're not going to achieve your best possible self until you first identify your best possible self, right? So whether that's if you want to make your tennis game better, or your souffle-er, right? Or your garden greener, or, you know, whatever it might be, you have to identify that. And so in families, I think you have to do that. So you ask for specific examples. I think we can let's talk about each of the three maybe and come up with an idea within them. So on the Adapt All the Time, an example of how this has changed is a family meeting system that we used in my family, and we adopted in my family. And if my wife were sitting here, while she would certainly be poking fun at me and telling me I'm talking too long in this conversation and I should be listening more, she would say that the family meeting thing that we did is one of the best three things that we did from this experimental life of family building over the last 2 decades. My kids just turned 20. And but the backbone of it is an idea called Agile. Okay, so if you go, this is an idea that began in software development. Okay, and for those interested, this idea is both in Secrets of Happy Families and in a TED Talk I gave on this topic. But basically, the idea was software designers were to go build me a product, and by the time that they came back, 89% of projects were laid over budget and completely irrelevant because things were changing so fast. Yeah. So a group of designers came up with something called Agile, and this has become the dominant way that software is developed over the last generation, and increasingly businesses of all sizes are using. And it's called Agile. And the principle is Agile is the opposite of what's called the waterfall method. And the idea of the waterfall method is some executive on top issues an order of this is how it's going to be done, and it trickles down like a waterfall until it gets to people on the bottom, and nothing is run that way anymore.
Right.
Government is not run that way. Business is not run that way. Teams, things come from the bottom up as much as the bottom down. Think of that commercial we've all seen on TV where the kids come to visit the grandparents, and the grandparents are here to deal with all my technology. Right. Especially now, and we see it more with technology. We know that our kids are technology, are savvier. We see in business reverse mentorship is a very big idea, not just top-down mentorship. So the idea here is you need to communicate all the time and in different directions, okay? And so, for example, in my family, when my kids were young, we used to have these morning checklists where we know that the two nuclear winners in families are the hour after everybody wakes up and the hour before everyone goes to bed, if the kids are very young. And so you can do things to make that better, and a lot of it is parents giving up power and empowering the children around them. But far more important is this family meeting system that we introduced. And so let me just talk a little bit about it, because it's built on the Agile family meeting. And you alluded to this earlier. We ask, and we've been doing it for 15 years. And as powerful as it was when our kids were young, I would say it's even more powerful as they've gotten older. And we now do it in the 3-generation family business that I co-run with my brother. We do it quarterly in that environment too. And we ask 3 questions. The first question is, what's going right? What are we doing well in our family right now? And everybody goes around the table and says. And then the second, it might be we're communicating, right? Or we handled that situation very well. Or when the fire broke out, whatever it was, we put the fire out. Now everyone goes around and says, what's not working well? Okay, we're not communicating well, or there's this problem over this, or somebody's sick and we need to help that person through it, right? Or we got to update the family will, or whatever it might be. And then what we do is we say, okay, we've now got 8 or 10 ideas in front of us. What are we going to work on right now? Between now and the next family meeting. When, in my immediate family with my wife and my children, we do this weekly. Okay, when they were home, now they're off in college. But, and then how's it going? Is it working? Is it not working? Right. In my extended family, we do this quarterly. Wow. Okay, and then once a year we do it with the spouses, and we're now talking about ways of bringing in the next generation. So the point is a system for managing change and acknowledging that. Today, this is happening. Next week, there's a surgery over here. Someone just lost a job here. There's a cancer diagnosis there. There's an automobile accident there. And so you are adapting in real time to the circumstances that people face.
Well, and that makes a ton of sense to me because with your encouragement in the book, we did our first family meeting.
Oh, wow.
I have my oldest leaving for college and my youngest is 8 years old. And And I think it's important, as you state, to get them involved early. But that meeting that we had, as great as it was formal. We went to a separate place. We had a formal meeting. We had a presentation. And I think I like what you said is, a lot of families might think we'll do an annual family meeting and we'll have an agenda and we'll be very formal. This is weekly, potentially at dinner.
Correct.
What went well? What didn't go well?
I would not do it at dinner, actually.
Okay, yeah.
The only thing I would not do it at dinner, I like what you said about, we were just talking before we came on. Actually, I've just spent the last couple of years since I've been an empty nester traveling, writing a book about ritual, right? And so now that I've gone on in my work to write about life transitions, I realize the importance of ritual. So in fact, at our family meeting, we have a little, one of the first things you need in a ritual is a boundary. Like that's the real world. This is inside the ritual. We begin by one person in our family meeting does a little tapping thing on the table. And then we do a sort of, ma, everyone has to copy, welcome. So you want to create this kind of sacred space.
Got it.
That's why I would not do it at dinner.
Right.
Okay, one of the things about talking about money, don't do it at Thanksgiving.
Right.
That's a different thing.
Right.
That's the go out and play side. That's different from the adapt all the time and the value. So create it. We have a special table where we do it. In fact, when our kids got older and we started talking about, say, college applications or summer internships, which is kind of where we don't do it at our family dinner, our family meeting table. And by the way, our family meeting table is our breakfast table, but this is something where I'm doctrinaire. No phones, no drinks, no snacks. This is that. And one of the reasons it's really valuable is precisely what you said, which is you want to do it when they're young, when the stakes are low.
Right.
I mean, one of my favorite lines in The Secrets of Happy Families, comes from Byron Trott. Now, Byron Trott, as you know, was Warren Buffett's banker, grew up on the wrong side of the tracks in Missouri and now lives in a 70,000 square foot house on Lake Michigan. And I went to see, he never talks to the press, and he agreed to talk to me. I went to like the 900th floor of some office tower in New York City, and he held up a piece of paper where he said, I represent 100 of the 100 wealthiest families in the country. And as a self-respecting reporter, I asked him, would he show me the list, which he refused. Right. But I was telling him how we do money at this family meeting, right? That we started an allowance system. We gave $1 for every year, and we forced our kids to divide this into 4 pots. And the 4 pots were spend, save, give away, and share. So we had money that we had to spend together. And so I was telling this to me, it's a bad idea. I'm like, oh, no, it's a great idea. No, he said, it's a bad idea. Let them make the decisions themselves. I'm like, oh no, Byron, we want to inculcate these values. Right. This is very thought through. And he's like, I don't think you should do it that way. I think that they should learn. And I said, but what if they mismanage it? What if they drive into a ditch? And he said to me, it's much better to drive into a ditch with a $6 allowance than a $60,000 a year salary or a $6 million inheritance. And that, I think, is crazy wise. Yeah. Right? So you want to have the meeting when your kid is 8. Right. And the biggest problem is who's picking up their toys, or, who's late for breakfast, or whatever it is, or who's too shy to greet somebody when they come to the door, and we're trying to teach adulting skills, or whatever it might be. That was a big one in our family. You want to do it so that when the stakes are higher, got it, and the circumstances are graver and the tests are stronger, that you already know, oh, we solved this at that table. Because the thing about having young children, at least, is sometimes you do need to be strong. Sometimes you've got to get on the plane, or the plane will take off without you, and you're having a tantrum in the airport. And you can't solve sometimes you got to get the broccoli down, or you got to get the kid to the test, or you've got to bring up the weeping child who's throwing a tantrum after missing the soccer goal in the soccer, whatever it might be. You've got to get through, but you know that there is that spot. And so that what you're grooving on is, this is who we are as a family. We solve things together. And someone can look someone in the eye and say, I was upset, or I was hurt, or I did the wrong thing. Yep. So it's the safe space, the ritualistic space, that's by far the most important part of it.
Well, I love that. And as big things come down the pike later, we're going to have a way to resort back to that. And I think the other way to resort back to is with storytelling within families. I know you say that families that know and share their story are stronger and more resilient. But when we think about storytelling, we often see from our clients that grandparents have this great responsibility well, actually opportunity, but then it turns into almost a responsibility to share the stories that created the values within this family. The stories about the dinner table or when they weren't getting on the plane and we had to have, but then how we solved it and it only happened once. Whatever the story is, how important stories can be in building happy and resilient families as well.
So this is, other than the family meeting and maybe the family mission statement and the secrets of happy families, it's the idea that's most quoted back to me. And I'll tell you the backstory because it's actually not really in the book. I was going to write a book about, a chapter about family dinner. And I called a woman named Laurie David who wrote a cookbook about this. She was married to Larry David, the caustic comedian. And she said, oh, you need to go see Marshall Duke. And I called Marshall Duke. And I basically, Marshall likes to joke, invited myself to dinner. So Marshall recently retired after 50 years as a psychologist at Emory in Atlanta. And he invited me, or I invited myself to dinner. And Marshall's wife, Sarah, works with children with needs, what we used to call special needs, but now they think they say needs is the new language. And she noticed that the children that she worked with who knew more about their family history seemed to navigate their particular life circumstance better. And so Marshall and his colleague Robin Fivish at Emory did a study that I later in the New York Times deemed the Do You Know study. And it was a series of questions about how much you know about your family history. Where was your grandfather born, right? Tell me who what happened around the child that around the time your parents met, around the time that you were born. And the children who scored highest on this test, which means the children who knew more about their family history, were the most capable of navigating the ups and downs in their lives. It was the number one predictor of a child's emotional intelligence. And when I asked Marshall why, he said that there are three types of family stories. One is what he called an ascending family narrative. We came from nothing. We worked very hard. We have a lot. Then there's a descending family. We had a lot. There was a war. There was a recession. There was a fire, and we lost it all. Or there's an oscillating family narrative. Grandpa came here. He worked very hard. He built a business, but his house burned down. His daughter was the first in the family to go to college. She became the vice president of a bank. She got breast cancer. And children who understand that their life is going to follow an oscillating path are better able to navigate the ups and downs that are inevitable in their own lives. And I will tell you, I wrote an article in the New York Times about this called The Stories That Bind Us in the column that you mentioned that I wrote in the New York Times. It was the number 2 most emailed piece in the entire year. And everywhere I go, people say, oh, I do that in my family. And I'm like, what do you? Or in fact, do you not want to talk about your pain or your difficulty or your suffering, right? You know that thing about when you have kids that they say that if you use like too much hand sanitizer, your kids won't have enough germs. That's how we are, is we want to protect our children. Right. We are taught, don't go home and say to my children that I had a bad day in the office or I just lost a big client, right? Or something. In fact, you want to, in an age-appropriate way, talk about this so that your child can see you. And by the way, this isn't passed down through the blood, which is the most common question I get about this. What if you have adopted children? In fact, Marshall has 2 natural-born children and an adopted child. This has nothing to do with DNA, biological. It has everything to do with family DNA. Yeah. Talking openly about the fact that there are inevitable oscillations. And so what I say to grandparents is, when you go visit your kids, forget criticizing your children, or more likely criticizing the in-law, the person because your child is perfect, but it's the in-law that's the problem. Forget doing that. Actually, tell the parents to go out and enjoy a night on their own, and you tell the children stories. Or even better, one of my crazier ideas is like, take the kids to the cemetery. To show them the tombstones, tell them the stories of these people. And later when we talk about life transitions, this idea saved my father's life.
Oh, I love that. You mentioned a couple of common mistakes, it sounds like, that families make, trying to maybe do a family meeting in the wrong space at the wrong time or over dinner. And are there other common mistakes that as a family listening today thinks about, what's one practical thing I can do, but also what shouldn't I do? What would be your advice there?
Well, I think I do think that the when and the where are a big problem. Okay, so here's how it works with older kids. It's Thursday night.
Mm-hmm.
It's a half hour after everybody's bedtime. Okay, you've got a business trip coming up. You know, the mom has a big presentation the next day. Somebody's got to buy the tickets for Thanksgiving. Someone forgot to get the milk because grandma's coming to visit on Sunday and we have to have the family pancakes. And you're sitting there stressing about this. Somebody's in the bathroom flossing and like the stuff is coming from the teeth and plopping all over the mirror. And our kids are watching us.
Yeah.
And here comes Junior saying, oh, can I go to Susie's house on Saturday night and stay a little later? And by the way, I need $20. What are you going to do at that moment? Fine, whatever, here's the $20. You say, no, that's not how it works in our family. We are a family unit. You are not an individual. Everything you do affects everything we do. Everything we do affects everything you do. You want to do that? Why don't you come to the family meeting on Saturday morning?
Right.
So our kids are watching us, in our craziness and learning that they can exploit that to their own advantage. So that's a small example of how to do something. So I would say the biggest problem that people have is not having identified the things that don't change. Okay, so we've talked about adaptability and a family meeting around that. But let's talk about the second, which is the families talk a lot. Okay, so I called, when I started working on this project, speaking of business, a guy named Jim Collins, right? He's wrote the defining management book of our generation, Good to Great, right? He was at Stanford Business School. And he happens to be a mentor of my brother's. And so I called Jim and I said, I'm doing this. And he has an idea in Good to Great, which is that you must stimulate progress. Well-run organizations stimulate progress. That's the adapt all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But they also preserve the core. Mm. So you need to identify the core. And that's this process of creating a family mission statement. Again, businesses do it, nonprofits do it, religious institutions do it, teams do it, families don't often do it. And so we put our kids when they were very young through this process of identifying, what our core values are. And we ended up, and he said to me, you don't need 25 because no one can follow.
Right.
25. That's like too many. So we had the family equivalent of a corporate retreat. Everyone got up in pajamas and we had a pajama party and we made popcorn. In fact, I wanted to make old-fashioned popcorn. It's very hard because everything is
in the pot,
like the Jiffy Pop thing, right? So I went and to the grocery store in Brooklyn where we lived had Jiffy Pop, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to screw this up. And so I got two, and sure enough, I burned the first one, it failed. That was, so anyway, so we made popcorn, we had this thing and we put these values up and we ended up with a series of values. And it was interesting because honesty is the best policy. Like, really? Like, I think maybe it's not my highest priority. Like, don't lie to me.
Right.
So we had to get through this whole thing. And then a few weeks later, we get a call from the school that one of our children has gotten into a spat. And so we've been summoned to come into the school, right? Without going into it, like, my wife went to Harvard and Yale Law School. Like, she's not really accustomed to being summoned to the principal's office, right? So we go to the principal's office and we're told that they had this whatever fight over the broken pencil, and we come back home. And so we meet in my office, and we had done this. I'm a writer. Like, one of the things I say is a downside of being the library is I have no one to steal office supplies from. So I have hotel pens and pads. Like, I'm in your office right now. There's no chance I'm going to leave here without some branded pad because I have no one to do this from. Okay. So we had stolen and we had a giant Post-it note, like, board, right? I was just in your office. You had a whiteboard. Yep. We didn't have a whiteboard. It was a peel 'em, stick 'em thing we had on the wall. So my wife brings my daughter. We have to call her to the principal office, who is us. And like, she runs an organization of hundreds of people. She has a $200 million budget. Her entrepreneurs, she supports entrepreneurs. Her organization Endeavor last year had $20 billion. She manages $750 million of assets. She had no clue how to run this meeting, right? Because she was, she had no idea what to say. And so I said to my daughter, like, oh, why don't you look? So because she was going to run the meeting. I was like, what's on our family? So she starts reading down the list. And one of them was, we help others to fly. Mm. And when she got to that, this was a prism, an opening to a conversation. Was this helping others to fly?
Right.
That's our core value.
Right.
Now, this family mission statement, I had it printed. It's now in our office. Do we do kumbaya and bow down to it and light candles and have that kind of ritual? No. Do we achieve it most of the time? No.
Right.
But it's there.
But it's there.
It's back to what I said, best possible self. What is your best possible selves that you can use in order to aspire to make sure so that when you are in a test or you are in a problem, you say, we're going to go back to first principles.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I think in the book in particular, you give, I forget what page it's on, but lots of the idea of a simple way to do a family meeting is let's look at all these words. Let's choose the ones that represent our family. And we did that with our family. And it was great to have our 8-year-old actually end up kind of leading a portion of that meeting, which was, I didn't expect.
Exactly.
But it's an easy way to do it. It's an easy first step for families looking to have this conversation that can be formal like that in a formal setting, offsite, or it can be very informal with these weekly family meetings about what's working, what isn't working.
And I will say in my extended family where I'm, co-run with my brother, a 3-generation family business, we have a family manifesto, a kind of an operating agreement that our family functions under. And the whole first page is, these are our values. We try to make, one of the things about if you're in a family business or you're in an intergenerational family kind of wealth transfer, family dynamic situations, one of the things that you've got to manage change.
Yeah.
You got to figure out what the core principles are. You've got to adapt all the time.
Yep.
You've got to talk a lot,
Yep.
and then you have to have experiences that that build connections. You have to go out and play. And I think that one of the things that I have found to be very effective, back to the first principles in the intergenerational family business that I help run, is we're not entirely a business. And we're not entirely a family.
Sure.
It's a family business. So if you were running a business that where the primary stakeholders were not family members, you might make a set of decisions one way.
Yeah.
But when the primary stakeholders are family members, it changes it. You get to decide how much. But it's the same thing. If you're in a family without a family business that you're running, you might make decisions. So the point is that simple, very complex idea is something that we go back to all the time.
Yeah.
It's not a family, it's not a business, it's a family business. And therefore we determine the principles. We're not reporting to Wall Street on a quarterly basis.
Yeah.
The shareholders are not unnamed shareholders. Yeah. They are family members. And therefore we bring their dreams and their wishes and the lives they want to enjoy and the meaning they want to fulfill into business decisions, how much we have to work through. But the point is, every conversation around family is a conversation around values. Every conversation around money is a conversation around values. And if you do not have the conversation about values, you cannot have the most effective conversation around family or money or time or wealth or joy or health or philanthropy or whatever it might be. It all is a reflection of your values, and that's the conversation that people are scared to death to have.
Well, you guide in the book how they can do that. And so I think that's a great place to end today. And I've heard you say before, in one word, the secret to the happy family, when you were asked in a different interview, you said, try.
Yes.
Right. You give them lots of options in here. We do have 25 copies of Bruce's books. If anybody would like them, just head on over to our YouTube page at youtube.com/TFO Wealth Partners. You'll see a link in the description there as you subscribe, and we'll get you out one of Bruce's books. Would love to do that. It's been a lot of fun. If you want to follow Bruce, you can go to his website at brucefeiler.com. That's Bruce, Feiler.com. And we'll post all of his social media handles and website on our YouTube page as well. So thanks again for being here. And thanks everybody for tuning into the Wealth and Purpose podcast. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for joining us on the Wealth and Purpose podcast. If today's conversation further helped you connect your wealth and purpose, please follow our show on your favorite podcasting platform. More importantly, help us help more families by sharing today's episode with someone you know.